and does so unmistakably. Unmistakable to wave, a sea in choosing will choose to suffer every likeness. A leaf turns only to suggest in the manner of leaves, to hold oneself, that is to say, in the as the contrary to sea in glass seems colorless. Whatever moves is an example, right? Isn't that true? Waves over tide might rise high enough to be violets curling in the upper chambers of the coral, one extremity at the advance of the next. A bird arrives on every non-essential wing. The impetus of flight was only the scheme that one had pictured, a remark upon this singular distance. He threads his way where I've explained to pools the rain through canvas. I wish you a good morning, Mr. Glass. And my neighbor, it seems, has lent an overflow that likewise lays a more sympathetic hand. Meanwhile, our rain includes the wall. Like a storm, some portion of the time has fallen. In the time remaining, I mean you, according to the wave. After the surge, I mean you, according to the wind. And I wrote that before all the bad hurricanes, so I don't know if that still applies or not. But as if motion makes itself of matter's gradual unfolding, the rain might be less an opposition and more the remnants of an immense reach. Yet what opens when the water won't articulate its depth, as if it were that distance within circumstance, quote unquote. When foresight fails, it names something in the clouds one thought might open. In body, the mind assumes the smallest wave, just as I am faithful to the thought that thought would fail. The wave has never been a figure. Dream upon any sea, and if not, we'll understand. We, motionless and liquid, and the glass, a minimum of water. The river floods the river, they answered, and we are what we spoke in apposition. Is it not less than the wealth of the sea to weigh so uncertainly? And would we find the words for similar terms? Leaving is next to stars, as unaltered forecasts rain. There is no way we can be sure ourselves. The glaze on which one rests is more than body, nor are they confined alone, the glass herein a bird. I think let's stop with that. Like I said, I've been waiting a long time to read that to you, John. So.
Thank you. You got to put it on the wall.
So the other thing I'd like to read is from a new book, a work in progress. It's a book that I don't think I'll ever finish. I mean, maybe I will. I don't know if it's finishable. But at one point, I had wanted to write a dialogue, like a Socratic dialogue, and I was writing it, and I couldn't think of names of the characters, so I just called them P and Q. I like the idea of the two terms of a syllogism being in conflict with each other, arguing with each other, becoming entangled with each other. And as I kept working on this, I started to realize that P and Q are the characters. The letters themselves are persons, or persona has a letristic quality to it. And this became, or it opened up into an extended meditation on letters, letters as meditation, letters as reflection. I love P and Q also because when you're doing letterpress printing and it's backwards, the P and the Q flip around, and mind your P's and Q's, they say, comes from that, right? And also, P and Q is a line and a circle. So two different kinds of infinities. And if P and Q themselves are in a dialectical relationship, each letter maybe is also a dialectical relation. So, a theory of paper being that field upon which all life extends, starring P and Q. P is a vessel of the world, but Q asks how its passage might have reached the world. The letters formed the universe to follow what their system would not contain. What letter, then, is the mark of any that have ever been? Let us remember is not a sign of letters, but only their circumstance, their conjunction. It's the impression one gets when one explains the letter in order to write the letter. Look at how you dream, enraptured in the flow of the open room, where it was a matter against the matter of the, are you here? The line brushed, spontaneous, hoping to establish some ground where we might claim some answers, where such answers might be sustained. What is it that neither P nor Q can reveal to paper? What letters must be blank when recognized? What shapes begin with letters before they become letters? And those were in italics, and if we were a congregation, we'd all say that in unison. Just imagine. The shape of P, the shape of Q are the same as the shape of an ideal imposed upon what might be possibly extrinsic to that ideal. The shape, however, of their mutual attraction is itself the ideal shape in all possibilities. Space begins at the point where each letter runs out of space. But the point itself gave us no reason to rest, as no one used their letters to record their absence. As if letters, instead of letters, they wrote only to describe the patterns used to punctuate their letters. Our point was to consider the point in proximity to what surrounds it. I am where I am, no matter where. Like Popeye, I guess, right? Which is the question. This part of the joke here is that I tried to use as many P words and Q words as I can. Though I didn't use Popeye, but maybe I should have. At times, P thinks Q is nothing so much as an enchantment, an illusory projection of its own image. Q claims that history could end, both of them resigned in their own impartial chambers. All ciphers should leave the world their letters, as if such letters would be legible. Let the next theory determine how and where we judge our affections. The letter in erasure is no invisible thing. The freedom it predicts brings with it the existence that can extend substance to our subject, even as the lines of our lines diverge. Where am I the thing, and when is it the thing which confronts me? In this way, you'd say, I declare myself in something uninterrupted. But it is my own concept that transparency is the same in all directions, the veil that appears to be. And of course, we've encountered this before. I didn't pass through the essence of, and of course I didn't, and now sound is noticeable when it is the sound of an existent hand indicating what is made to spiral by an invisible restraint to understand the principle of what may bend and what may straighten and whose form this is, and not my unorganized letters, partitioning each letter. Still, one can hardly be thought of singular enough to first appear. The point is another matter, and no actions are the same. In that point, however, the transparent predicates what it must. You become someone who arrives without the predicate of speech, the silence of the wind, somewhere along the line. Pause for a second. That's a lot. That's a lot of words. I have a PhD in English, unfortunately, and it's very hard. I'm both drawn to the language of criticism and philosophy, and also, try to turn it on its head. But I guess you can't beat it out of me. I don't know. As the letter tries to change itself, see where it freezes, like a static letter, but unlike any you've ever seen before. The letter can equally be mine and yours, beyond any art that would compare or make them common. A leaf with trees that are inseparable. What letter would begin this page without ever returning? Is P just another's monument to the propensity of P? Where, replies Q, does the unbroken meet the want of its duration? Where the picture of the letter depends upon the letter, where the letters salvage whatever they can gather. The space in the letter shows the blank within the letter, like one's mind shows itself without the mind. Or, dripping from the north side of the northern stone, the letter is the heartiest of tears. Troubled by everything, the letter is the myth beneath my house. Did you know that, Alexander? My daughter's here. The letter made the outline of the wall and the outline of the broken star. Through illusions, we have blossomed. But will the letter draw emotion that will turn upon the arc which extends beyond its reach? If the letter seems uncertain, it is not because I read standing above letters traced in sand. The first wound is said to be the wrong letter. Winter came, breaking the storm. The letter was written from Lotus to the White Mountains. I'll just read 2 more quick ones. We're within time, right? In suggesting these figures, the line means to deny the line means to deny the limits of creation. Likewise, the letter said, the only way is no way. As the lines envelop, it is only natural that I should be all that has been left unsaid. What sound unwinds what one had meant to say? The letter was certain, a point perfect in its own desire. But the letter already assumes an unlimited alchemy of wishes. I can only see through paper what did not emerge from the same fount as all the rest, the leaf of the ordinary, the entablatures of stone. P is certain to develop. Q is the free shape of the necessary. Now we are circular. Now an incorporeal thing. Leave us to our elements, our names thus rendered. Okay, and the last one. The problem is that it's possible not to be a realist and to attempt, nevertheless, to draw unfinished letters. Lines in conjunction unfolding into stairs in the relief of stairs to extract one's mind from the letters of the mindless. You can divide what is impossible to combine, said P, as they stood in the well of an infinite number. And does continuity not then lend itself a shadow? Take this as it is, as in the letters were nothing more, nothing less, according to their type. To see the river we draw space, to see space we draw the space in rivers. These shapes were present from the start, but none of them were any more or any less. Their tendency is to emerge, secured gracefully to their making, an elaborate letter to the one that finished words, and yet a diffused line drawn between itself and what question it would fix upon the brush. The letter as thought might be worth the conscience upon which it stands. To know and to realize that the letter dreams for all it knows. That I am still is not material, but that I am fixed amongst the objects one fails to remember. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steven. Before I start to introduce Pierre Nicole, let me just say, I'm standing under a cormorant. This one drawn by Nicole Peyrafitte, but we are standing or sitting on land that has been the home in millenniums past of the Hohokam and in more recent times of the Tohono O'odham people and the Yaqui people, and at certain times of nomadic peoples like the Apache. And it's worthwhile, whether you live here, whether you're visiting here, whether you're standing, whether you're walking, when you're in Tucson, of just thinking about that relationship of people to place, and of yourselves to that place, and of people to peoples. A sometimes fraught relationship. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of this that I'm going to read is quoted from things written or said by Pierre or Nicole, particularly in a wonderful presentation they gave yesterday at the university. Some of it is probably things I misheard, or that were just running in my mind at those times. But first, to locate from Brooklyn to here, or maybe from the Pyrenees and from Luxembourg, and from deep caves and high soaring, from performances all over the world, and teaching in a variety of universities and colleges, the longest stint being at SUNY Albany, over 80 books of poetry, essays, translations, anthologies, including several of the work of Paul Celan. Pluridisciplinary, a Pyrenean-born artist now in Brooklyn, a Luxembourgian poet now in Brooklyn, Deep Sea and Upper Limit, Ene Duana and the Future. Everything is translation, transference, transmission, trans-stepping. Everything is miscegenation, mixed, mongrel, among. Pierre Joris and Nicole Peyrafitte. A pair of chores and a nice cold pair of feet. Paragicole and nearest a feet. A fit pair and jocularly near us. The circular lines of my canto diurnos traversed, transpersed by the lines of flight of my arrows, my eros, my errors leaking out and into simultaneously. Nomadics, the poet as comet. On one's hands, feet in the air, holding brush, painting shapes, letters, free in a cave, watching the red center of a Venus, the origins of us, the vulvas of us. Art is truth, setting itself to work. Let's cook! Let's eat! The latitudinal line that goes through Lushan also goes through Albany, also goes through or near Milwaukee, Xinjiang, China, Liaoning, Inner Mongolia, the island of Hokkaido, Crater Lake, Oregon, the island of Corsica, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea. From a dedication, Ene Duana Mea. 25,000 years before the present, something began. Something ran, still running, still running, still running. And we are in the desert, and thus from the book HJR by Pierre, the ends of the earth are the ands of this earth, and the desert place, Eremei Anthropon, the place without humans. If you have seen it with your own eyes, then a human was there. It is no longer the desert. Only by turning your back on the desert will it become desert. Again and yet, always again, the limits of the eye, the horizon's curve redraws the desert. And irremediably, eremii, the distance of a bow shot or two away to go with the arrow in flight. Curve of horizon, cure of horizon, take flight. Anthropos, where you fall, you rest. Things fall where they lie, NP, on the desert floor. The unsettled tribes pick up and move on. And one last quote from a wonderful unfolding work. And this is RIP for CLS, which was Claude Lévi-Strauss. The self is haïssable, detestable. The man who just lost his self said long ago, adding that
Creative people are.
All right, let's see how this works best. Yeah, this should work. You hear me? Yes. Well, let's take our jackets off.
It's gonna stop. No, you're not going any further today. Ho, 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 hemna pirenenka, ho, 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 hemna pirenenka, hemna de haga, hemna al ser, hemna ante diluviara, hemna de car, hemna de pera. Le peire, a peire, che è baridat a che gugiat de Luxemburgo, kin saper peire. Peire Jordi, che è un poeto, che è un gugiat de letras, un gugiat de muts, un bohaire de muts. Mes que mes de tut, peire Jordi, che è gugiat de mon cor. Ho, 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 hemna pirenenka, gujat de Luxemburgo, gojat de Luxemburgo. E ara, to let the domo poetic scarstic action works begin. You're good?
The incantation you wrote in Occitan Gascon, the language of your native land, and today you wanted to sing it and pay respect and acknowledge the native people on which land we are now, as Charles just did. Here on the ancestral land of the Hohokam, we learned today that there are 21 native nations in Arizona. The one who were at the presentation yesterday got a slightly different version that is more focused on the 11th, 12th century bas-relief from which she came from in the Pyrenees. This version talks about Pierre Joris in Occitan. And as we are going to dwell into our demopoetics. Nou, loszon je hebt de plutsenbuzzes, en dat is mijn spoor, en dat is de nekkertje aan mijn spoor. I say something in Luxembourgish, and that is that she, Nicole, is nekkertje in Luxembourgish. So we all come from those different tribal languages. Let's start with a quote by Nathalie Diaz, Native American poet and writer with Mojave and Atlantic's descent. A quote that Jim Rothenberg uses in the intro to his final anthology, just out, The Serpent and the Fire. Learning and speaking one's native language is an emotional and political act. Each time a poet brings a native language onto the white space of the page, into the white space of the academies and institutions of poetry, it is an emotional and political act. And that's what we just did, and especially Nicole. Hold on, Jesus. Now, it so happens, thank you very much for inviting us, Charles, Tanny, the whole POG group. We're very, very pleased to be here. And by an odd chance, today is also Paul Celan's birthday. He would be 124 today. So let me open with a poem of his, which is a poem that I love dearly because it is Celan's strongest statement against what the three monotheistic disaster modes have wrought for us. And there's something to think about a lot these days. Tenebrae. We are near, Lord, near and graspable, grasped already, Lord, clawed into each other, as if each of our bodies was your body, Lord. Pray, Lord, pray to us, we are near. Wind bent, we went there. We went there to bend down over crater and mar. To the trough we went, Lord. It was blood. It was what you spilled, Lord. It shone. It cast your image into our eyes, Lord. Eyes and mouth gape, so open and empty, Lord. We have drunk, Lord, the blood and the image that was in the blood, Lord. Pray, Lord, we are near. Sorry, I'm having a slight trouble with your computer. I got it. But it's a bit more complex.
We had to change computers at the last minute.
To get the image on there, so Nicole could run the images, So now I would like to thank Charles for the marvelous book he published with a wonderful cover by Nicole, which is based on a Persian miniature on the execution of Mansur al-Hallaj. Now, I started this sequence of poems shortly after the US invaded Iraq, somehow wanting to ward off or hold at bay the utter destruction of the people. And the city of Baghdad, one of the greatest old cities in the history of humans. Years ago, when living in Algeria and reading up on Sufism and related matters, I'd been fascinated by Mansur al-Hallaj, the 10th century revolutionary poet, Sufi thinker, and teacher. Al-Hallaj had been executed after much torture in Baghdad on 6th of March 922, after 11 years spent in jail. His crime had been to have said, Ana al-Haq, I am the one, I'm the truth, an expression that traditionally names one of the attributes of God. There you see the tenebrae setting in. Something neither the political or the religious powers of the day could condone, even from a very famous and highly loved and respected visionary poet and teacher. I called the book Meditations on the Stations of Mansur al-Hallaj, where the word station is a translation of the Arabic word mawqif, a concept I had written on in a Nomad Poetics, defining it as, quote, the pause, the stopover, the rest, the stay of the wanderer between two movements, moments of movement, two runs, two sites, two places, two states. It is a complex term which I analyzed at some length in that book. One, adab, manners. What is the manner? I mean, the matter with you standing there in the desert. Take your hands out of your pockets. The desert has no manners, but many pockets, which is no excuse for your lack of know-how when it comes to sharing. This last pinch of hot sand and mica hides as lint in the pockets of your heart. 2. Rahab, awe. The awe is in gawking. When you see it, it scares you. Where it's the unseen, you seem to want to care for, even though it scars you to face the awe that is not in the thing or the it, but between the two. It's the relation a we can be. 5. Ajab, wonder. And you'll find or wonder if you don't. And if you do wonder to wonder, wonder is a jab in the head. A wonder pries the heart ajar, or is a dumb thing too often, blinds us to what's left to do. So he walks on water, whatever. The miracle, in other words, is a wonder. Ein Wunder. The loaves and the wine at the wedding, a neat trick. But one we need to be able to do anywhere, all the time. We can, or could, that wonder would be called just distribution of the world's wealth. 9. Nazar, probity. Lament its absence among those who govern. 10. Sidq, sincerity. You could try standing beside your word, but which one of the many thousands? 11. Rifq. We stand here riffing on comradeship, though we don't know the first or the last letter of it, though we are, or have to be, in the middle of what Creeley called the company, those we break bread with, even if it turns out to be poisoned fish, as you and I did that once. The comradeship goes on. In the particle com links us to the common, a manifesto of equality, and we will keep standing here in the wind on the corner where desert and city meet. We will keep standing here, our hands in your pockets, always riffing, even if some of us are spectral comrades now. As it is our job to be close to those gone, to bring their news, talk through their voices. We are all they have left, squeezed as they are, in the tight fists hands make in our pockets.
So now we're going to be transitioning to more recent work, namely our thinking about domopoetics. So I coined the word domopoetics after what was about 25 years of sharing artistic domestic practices. Pierre didn't like the term domopoetics at first, but until I pointed its etymological range, knowing that he always falls for etymology. Notice that the immediate complex mess of language, see, and the translation. So Pierre was a little more dubious about the word, given that the term domo can have some dumb connotations. But that's exactly what sold me on the term. As we all know, domopoetic, like domestic life can turn into some pretty silly and stupid situations.
Dumb in both meanings, silly, stupid, and temporarily unable or unwilling to speak. But then on reflection, the term allowed me to play escape from the domos, the house, the locked space via etymologies, the vertical nomadism of words through time and space. So that beyond the two of us and the children thus generated, we can reach a community, a shared sociality. Our domopoetics is ecumenical in the sense of an earth household, to use Gary Snyder's term, which is of course an Englishing and extension of the term ecology, built on the Greek oikos, house, living space, and logos, discourse, thought. It thus refers to the science and art of living. Then Nicole added the term caustic.
That comes from my relationship with the caves, particularly the cave of Gargas that we're going to talk about later.
More on the caves later, yes.
So karstic comes from the word karst, though, meaning limestone, and it refers to the geological phenomena of dilution and transformation, often but not always through hydraulic, i.e. water-based infiltrations in the formation of superficial or underground limestone topographies. What I've called karstic action paintings is an open-ended series of live performance that started in 2011, but we extended it to our collaboration. And these works explore proprioception, sense of body position, and kinesthesia, the sense of body movement. We'll show you a couple of examples.
Note that such porosity and interpenetration and transformation of our habitat is not just an image, a metaphor, but the literal reality of our worlds, and shows in works the interconnections between the inanimate and the animate, of the mineral, vegetable, and animal realms, and of which the human is but one, not necessarily essential element. Here, then, Nicole's vision of a symparesis is central. But let's quickly get back to the beginning of our collaborative work, the very beginning.
So that's probably our earliest collaboration. This photo of a cloud I took as we were dating. We were turning the corner to get to Pierre's house in Encinitas, California in the early 90s, probably 1990 or maybe late 89, where I also lived at the time. And I was stunned by how the cloud looked like the US. And I guess it was the omen that said we were going to stay here and together.
I was putting together, as usual, the book of poems I had already called Turbulence, and this photo immediately felt right as the book's cover art. Meanwhile, Nicole has done covers for over 30 of my books. Here's the book, and now the title poem accompanied by an early 90s animation of that image by Nicole. Turbulence, critical transformations, talk about weather, hominids out of a drier Pliocene, forest withdrawal, sudden wide vistas, a savanna niche. The past shrinks to first symbol, meager clump of trees. That's it for 500,000. For 1.5 million, stasis under clear skies, a silent sun. Then ice and an urge called culture. Climactic change opens new vistas. The clump of trees shrinks into the brain, mold-up trunks, bridge hemisphere gap. Hands held up, twirling sticks, sparks, a younger night. The bright fire behind the eyes, back to elephant graveyard of time, convexed out, a smile remembered to remember. Brain trace, notched on universe, the universe down now on incised bone. Reversal is the movement of Tao. After stasis, change. Bring color to cheeks. The weather does. Change, sharp, bone sceptering girdle. Clouds over the moon. Slain deer shoulder blade. Cracks in fire. Memory remembers to look forward. Cracks in the sky. Know it in your bones. One moment earlier, something had deviated, moving obliquely. This is local fortuity, declining exactly and more exactly deviation from equilibrium. The incline, the streak of lightning bars the clouds. Immediately a shape happens, roughly and circular. No need for more. A little hole around which people gather like bees. A dead body at center. A world where accident is rule. Begin here, in the middle, by the smallest angle. Deviation begins. Be gone, get off the road. What road? When, at the beginning, all directions are equivalent. Begin again. In the heart of the city, I is born. At the smallest angle, the sign reads, toute direction, points one way only. I is born. At the smallest angle, gives a slide, the fastest slide down. Direction born side by side, the laminary flow at the edge of the city, that is all heart, meets you, turbulence.
You were young at one point. That was the year we met.
We did want to show you that photo, you know.
Moving on to more recent times. The French Il a plu sur notre lessive. It
Yeah.
rained on our laundry.
Now in 2021, we had an exhibition at the Gallery Simoncini in Luxembourg, structured in 3 sections, a structure that we will loosely use now here too.
So the upper floor was the canopy section, and the canopy, of course, refers to the trees and their inhabitants, especially birds. Here it showed, we showed some bird paintings of mine and some previous casting actions that we had done together, and we had printed this kind of cartel. I don't know what to call the French call it cartel. And this one had a poem of Pierre, and mine will come up later.
Outside, sun caught in bare tree branches, cradled. Inside, me caught in shelter in place, cradled too. P.S. We shall both rise again.
And this is the space, those are the upper space where we had talked about the branch.
Yes, and the branches were gathered in Luxembourg from my family's forest and represent an homage to the amazing knowledge trees are imparting to us once we start listening and looking closely. We also played bird sounds, which I had recorded and assembled.
And I'm going to play them now for the next section. We will now read some passerine bird poems and other nature interaction, but first let me say a few words concerning what I call l'état oiseau, bird state. And this is something I am currently working on. État oiseau, bird state. Many things can change the dynamic and outcome of a practice. The COVID pandemic and then family health issues influenced mine positively. Work on nature exploration was not only healing, sustainable, but most of all reconnecting me to a more intentional experience and practice that in many ways flowed naturally. What is bird state? Simply put, it is the way I approach my exploration while doing field work. After a few years of looking through binoculars, taking photographs, and drawing birds, I registered that the very uplifting visits to the nearly empty shores of Brooklyn, Long Island, especially the icy winter ones, or while visiting parks or the shores around our hood, always felt like phenomenon. This is bird state, when my sense of perception truly increases as I tune into the awareness that my body is the primary site of contact with what surrounds me, and most of all with the more than human world. Receiving, engaging, participating with, in the intertwined elements. It lets surface what David Abram calls animal sense and sensuous terrain.
And here are some sparrow poems. I wanted to write a sparrow ad, like an Iliad, like an epic about the tiny birds. So I love those. This morning, sparrow hops on the small baton-like branch and onto another a few feet beyond the open window, in perfect accord with Bach's Partita for violin solo number 1 in B minor, comes from my speakers. Or is this collage just an illustration of my blatant paucity in knowing musical tempi? And Nicole's suggestion that birds came first, music after, makes me wonder if in truth it isn't Bach who's in perfect accord with the sparrow's harp. Whatever's true, both and, they, the sparrow and Bach and Nicole, an awesome, unholy trinity, meant to write Trinity, Paget, his autocorrector, made my morning. Hold on, I need to find where I am here. Got it. Sparrow poem number 6. So what's that arrow in your name, Sparrow? And the SP, spill it out. Not the seed, the meaning. Is it you, your Latin praenomen, some collapsed abbreviation, or just that from which the arrow was, i.e., you, bow, and your name, this bow and arrow? Have I cracked that seed? I mean I named you, or insulted you, who just flew off to the furthest branch of that sidewalk tree, still looks black at 9 a.m. with the sun in our backs? Or is it that pair of cackling grackles chased you away? You seem okay with the smoke from the Russian gent's cigarette wafting up to us, and against which I now slam my window shut.
So in December of 2021, a mega rarity for our region appeared at Owlset Park in Broken Bay Ridge. A displaced ash-throated flycatcher and tyran à gorge cendrée, Miarchus cineraens, came to visit. He's supposed to be here. He was there. So the drawing is from a 2021 Leporello, available at the book table. This Miarchus cineraens had wandered from the western skies and graced us with his presence for several weeks. Are we on the right place at the right time? Being for the world. Être pour le monde. Now, that is too Christian, too transcendent. Being in the world. Être au monde. Ah, that's already better. But being of the world. Être du monde. Best, because of its sense of immanence. Quote, we polish an animal mirror to look for ourselves. End of quote. Donna Haraway. And there is the page of the book where all the poems come from. There we go. We're climbing down.
Climbing down from the canopy, we came to Earth in Boise, Idaho, 2016, when Nicole got deeply fascinated by those other flying objects of the American West, vegetable in nature, some of which even tumble along from continent to continent, incontinent in their movements, one could say. Nicole brings them into her performances and writings as here, combined with my own more amateurish attempt at videoing.
No, we're very professional. To complete and celebrate 29 years, seeking serendipitous wisdom for our upcoming journey, white sage remains and witnesses frost heaves, old machinery, and Russian thistle. Yes, tumbleweeds! Tumbleweeds! Icons are invasive. Here, a tumble car next to magic reservoir. Faith won't help human condition. Jesus is not my co-pilot. You are. Stems separate from roots. It's how I got here too. Touch me not, I spill beans and talk like a contaminated flax seed. Burning and prescribed. I thrive in disturbed sites.
This piece was created for the caustic action we did at the Ming Gallery in Boise. The painting was done on that occasion, and I can tell you that tumbleweeds are really itchy, scratchy on the bare skin. It also has to do with our anniversary, hence its relevance at that moment, situation here.
I don't think you have to complain with a scratchy. I have to complain with a scratchy.
Well, both did.
Look, I was in the middle of it. I was going to go without clothes, but I kind of gave up that idea. See, I was in the middle of it. And that was an interesting piece of painting. That's in Boise. I don't know if they're showing it. Stay at this gallery, Ming Gallery in Boise. I think it's you, Pierre. Are you going to
Okay. Yeah, loosely following the structure of our 3 levels, here is the middle section called abri, shelter, after the canopy frolics and tumbleweeds. This is the open air space linked to the public, the people, and the politics, what I call the commons. A shelter is not necessarily an island. As title for something cogent right now comes to mind and brings to mind Eric Motram's 1971 book title, Shelter Island and the Remaining World. So now, is shelter the opposite of the remaining world? When the remaining world is helter-skelter, late 16th century adverb, a rhyming jingle of unknown origin, perhaps symbolic of running feet, or from Middle English, skelter, hasten, or not. No, shelter is island. Island is always plural, is always already part of some multiplicity, an archipelago, a series of sound groups, a local thrush, chickadees at their red plastic spinning bins, active for dark brown striped white sunflower seeds, gulls, white crab and cree, low overwintering short plains.
So, on this level, we had some recent casting action paintings, and we, both of us, and we also did 2 live performances, one for the opening, one for the finissage. And all these performances, you can see them on our Vimeo channel or on my website. They are available. They were different musicians. They were a lot of fun. And both times you were wearing the robe.
Yeah, I don't know if I could still do this, but So, for my latest collection, Interglacial Narrows, published by Contramundum Press in 22, gathers work from 15 to 21, and a few Cormorant poems will be published by the Gallery Simoncini in this edition. That's the paperback, and there was a limited edition of 60 copies, which each one had an original Cormorant painting by Nicole, one of which I used for the cover of Interglacial Narrows. The art of the fugue. No, not today. This morning it is l'art de la fugue, or how to run away from yourself, to come to yourself through an outside snow this morning that lives up to and beyond your vague ideas of another beyond. Behind, rather, as from the other side of this page, the ink bleeds through my contrafugue that goes into das geht in die Fugen, an in-between, das es kracht, my counter-move and sound, mirror images, brings nothing home except, right now, what stops my Sturm, this metaphor, that ink can bleed, or can it? And another little poem from that book, very different in nature. Trigonometry of the Trinity. And the Lord, having rested from his labors, sat up, looked around, and seeing how his critters had fucked up his creation, he raised his hand and put a bullet through his head. Thus the third eye was born. And 2 poems for the cormorants. 1. The heart of the cormorant is at the head of its name, or its name. Sorry, I'll do it again. The heart of the cormorant is at the head of its name. It wants more, but no rant. 2. We applaud the cormorant, even if the fish slipping down its gullet won't. Halfway down my morning walk, and a lament for missing fauna forms in my head, remembering yesterday's mantis and turtle, with only a half dozen sleepy gulls swinging nonchalantly on the flat waters halfway between here and Staten Island. So it is all an in-between, a halfway house, New York. When, of a sudden, from under the water a cormorant emerges, sits quietly for a moment, and then with Olympic precision, as it starts to dive back under, another cormorant emerges 25 feet away, in perfect rhyme with this disappearing semblable. A fallow crocorax, da, fort, da, made my morning, and no doubt theirs too.
Back to my bird state exploration. Eavesdropping onto the ocean. Observations generate questions. Who is an armless epibion? Ask the heron in the sketchbook. Can you lower the sound, please? Ardea erodias. High tide day between Calvervaux and Coney Island Creek. I paddle among 5 impassable great blue herons perched on shipwrecks and rusted industrial decay. These majestic sentinels remain silent, vigilant, resilient, and will wait patiently for their prey to come within range. Neither the muffled brouhaha of cars, planes, and soccer games nearby, nor the gouged out eye of the almost fully submerged yellow submarine seems to be of concern. My presence is noticed, but not significant. They take off. Their majestic flight leaves me elated, deflated. The gracious landing on the gnarled dead tree is symptomatic. And the message is potent and clear. Find peace and time for yourself. It's at Coney Island Creek. That's 8 minutes from our house where I put my cannon. That's New York City, people. We have nature too.
And that's a guy who built himself this
Submarine in the 70s.
He wanted to explore the wreck of the Andrea Doria. And then when he launched it right there the first day, it just sunk. And he didn't have the money to fix it, so it's there.
It's still there.
The yellow submarine is really...
If you come to see us, we'll take you to see the yellow submarine.
Questies. Questies. Questies.
Life world thoughts granted by Kildare proximity phenomenon, Charadrius Vociferis, shifts my mind from in the world to in their world, both swamped by cold winter sun and industrial remains here at Calvervaux. This is just a fact, a situation to be observed and delight in, a golden moment to spread my wings beyond my limited content.
And a poem from the same place written in February 24 with new wars and killings going on. Peace flag, tattooed, no tattered. I see through you from land into sea and nowhere to land, and vice versa, and vice between sun and shade, between light and water, between rock and land, between wood and rock, tattered flag, flood-stained peace. Tattooed flag blood, stained piece, tattooed flag hold up the peace flag, tattooed, note tattered by soldiers, washed in water, left not to dry, but to hang, rope and black plastic tatters, hang it all, hangs in no balance between land and sea, between you and them, between me and me, along this shore, here to reassure me and you. There is blood slowly washing out. There are holes in the flag between sea and land. There are algae adhering to rocks, waving in the water. There is broken wood, waving in the water. There are ripped black plastic bags, waving in the wind, calming, washing the blooded flag.
So Pierre looks at everything, all the remains on the end, and I look at the birds.
I have another book in the works called Flotsam and Jetsam. Pictures of all the stuff along the shore.
So in February of 2023, we had another unusual visitor on Shore Road Promenade. This is literally across the street from us. All those couple of poems that are going to come now. This is a razorbill. The colonial seabird seems to be alone today. I am literally chasing Le Petit Penguin up and down the Narrows and barely keeping up on my bicycle. I'm counting how long it stays underwater to be able to catch a shot between dives. It's cold, it's crisp, it's bright. We both love it, both having fun. Our playful dispositions don't reveal any concerns regarding our status. The razorbill, as the only extant member of the genus Alcala of the family Alcidae, and I, as a Homo sapiens, a juvenile species 30 million years his junior. These moments hold neither despair nor hope, but a sense of co-presence, an all-filled moment with companion species. Purple sandpipers. The Arctic winter residents have returned from their Arctic tundra breeding grounds. From late November to April, rain, snow, or shine, a small, consistent contradiction of Calitris maritima forge the shore promenades rock along the Narrows. This is your train, not ours. Les bécassos violets, s'il vous plaît, are bicontinental, yes. Found on both shores of the Atlantic, from Greenland and Iceland to northern Spain and exceptionally in North Africa. In France, they winter along the coast of Dunkirk and Biarritz and on our Maryland. How smart of them to avoid all the tourist traffic. Dedicated couples they are, with very little extra pair copulation, as DNA studies have confirmed their essential monogamy. Voila. And this is by deduction. Their name could be Lekau in Lenape. The totem of the Boy Scout Leka Lodge, chartered in 1935 in Camden County, council located West Collingswood, New Jersey, was the sandpiper. And it makes sense, since the Lenape English Dictionary gives the translation lekau equal sand, gravel. So it is this little fellow is in the notebook.
So the upcoming video was part of the installation at a group show curated by Nina Levand at Sapar Gallery in Tribeca, called Women and Other Wild Creatures, Matrilineal Tales. It allowed Nicole to interact with another of our favorite species, the horseshoe crab, also known as Limulus polyphemus. She didn't find me old enough, so she goes and frolics with 450 million-year-old critters, true blue bloods on top of it all. But I came to supervise and learn something and shoot B-roll. Nicole was holding one camera with her feet inside the horseshoe crab carcass, while I held the other camera and the bathrobe over my arm as she started taking off more and more clothes. You never know who shows up at Plum Beach at 7 a.m.
No horseshoe crab were armed. I mean, they were my carcasses. You see in video, there were carcasses I found on the beach previously. Acceptance of a past, returning in dreams, as a liminal bird-shaped consciousness, half prey, half myth. They fix me. They love me. I too love them forever. Yeah, I just met her. So to know more about this piece, because there is so much to say about the horseshoe crab, I invite you to go on the online magazine Le Chant de la Sirène by Laura Hinton, where she published the full text, the video, and the artwork that goes with this piece. I have also some in my website.
Now, the limbless polyphemus or horseshoe crabs are a good transition to move to what we had called the basement floor of our exhibition, i.e. the sanctuary. Here in the lower floor of the gallery were various works related to cave. Among them, one of the chasubles I wore during a few performances, and most of Nicole's bivalve paintings. And now, closing with our perspectives on the Gargas cave.
It's next to where I was born. And I do the female representation, and Pierre will talk about the hen. So this female representation dated around the gravity and time 23,000. And Gargas is in southwest of France, in the Pyrenees. At Gargas, I grasp and tap into vulvic knowledge. I give myself up to the cave. Revivre la grotte, se replacer, not remplacer. Not far from the opening, around the corner, on the left-hand side, I crouch down and gasp. Your vulva. My vulva. Your vulva, our vulva. Une vulve gravicienne, a millennial rendezvous, a geomatrix dedicated to secular workship. Wet and oxidized vulva. Lethal vulva. Your paradoxical stillness resuscitates our pulverulent uterine memories. Je vous salue, ô vulve pleine de grâce, hail to you, vulva full of grace, your redness, your wetness, you, the unfailing witness, le témoin séculaire, Roger Peyre, Roger Peyre, Roger Peyre. So here, a little explanation though. This was a natural formation that the prehistoric people, they just added a little piece piece of
Iron oxide
iron oxide,
and the clitoris.
and to this day, it's still wet.
20,000 years, red and
20,
wet.
Wow.
red and wet. Doesn't know menopause.
Century of hands. One, to cut beneath the humdrum, to get language on the road, to dig through the layers from last night's hangover to a Byzantine arch 600 years old, a carefully constructed something, a Ciceronian sentence, a habit of daily diagnostics meant to work language mano a mano, to brickle, crumble it between thumb and forefinger into crumbs, to feed the pigeons and geese that press close in, the elaborate starved gangways of hunger mind. 2. Mano a mano into the double cave of Gargas. His fiction is a wild he, and he at the Commune of Aventignan is propriétaire and gestionnaire of the mouth of that earthly swallowing up. Herein the long conduit hands on walls, blown clear shadows against stone, all dated 27,000 years ago, give or take 4 centuries. The countdown gives of 231 hands in negative outline and positive imprint. 114 show mutilations of 1 or more fingers. Only 10 show no deficiency in finger joints. The remaining 107 not well enough preserved through the millennia to allow a decision. There are right hands, there are left hands, hands of women, hands of men, hands of children. Note, all thumbs are there, no thumb is mutilated. Oh, opposable self-definition of the human. These are Cro-Magnon hands, fingers folded in silent code as paint is blown from mouth or bone to frame a hand. Language of bent fingers decodes the layers of humans' understanding of humans. If early is primitive, claims mutilation in savage ritual, while Le Roi-Gourand's theory wants to rhyme finger mutilations with silent hand code signals of Kalahari Bushmen's hunters, info-represence of game. 3-folded middle fingers present gazelle, the middle alone, giraffe, an open hand, no fingers bent, monkey. Or illiterate primitivism bias backed by Catholic Church in Franco-Cantabrian area, need therefore to insist on full linguistic and symbolic competence of Paleolithic humans. As early is rich culture, birth, read the missing finger joints as folded in silent language code. For writing is early, though testing correlations for recurring combinatorial patterns remains to be done. A book, The Keys of the Caverns, is very early and the archaeology of mourning needs credit. Cro-Magnon meander, which complicates mother, nature or capital M, goddess, black or white. And the shamaness knows the rooms Clayton winds his way through. In Gargas the quester wriths through, or ate mushrooms, or fell asleep. We will never know. He turned himself into a uterine double. He located the sole gate of access to paradise. He dived to the bottom of the sea, followed a bear into a grotto, had the sense to listen to a hedgehog. We will forever know the beautiful U-turn of his journey. He went in a boy, came out a girl, a woman. Oh, that Olsen's demand to Boulderaf. Why don't you put this history together? She's the clue. She, our Suma girl, Nana, a hot idea, had been followed up in 1950, so that we could be done with the hunting hypotheses. There was no hunting in the caves. The hands, the hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cecil. Also, thank you, John, Cynthia, Charles, and everybody who came. And our new friend that we met yesterday, looking at the petroglyph. We said, why don't you come tomorrow? And today, here we go. That was very nice. Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions, or I wanted to show
Our
you.
poets are open for questions. Stephen will be back in a minute.
I wanted to show you some photos of that I took, but since I can't plug the computer, that I took of here. I was so happy to discover all your birds.
She said 4 or 5 lifers.
Of course, I've never been here. You have pretty birds. Well, we can take questions.
So that was just amazing. Thank you so much. Quite remarkable. I don't know if this will make any sense, but I was thinking about Domo Poetics, and I know you know there's the Olson essay on Melville, equal that is to the real itself, where he talks about non-Euclidean geometry, and the sense that in non-Euclidean geometry you can have a congruence between something very large and something very small if they have the same shape. And Olson uses that to talk about how Melville is able to make a really large space completely local and intimate, and that would explain Maximus, for sure. So almost everything you did, the photographs and everything else, there's this sense of something right here that is, it's also incredibly large at the same time. So.
Thank you.
Thank you to bring Charles Olson.
I mean, Olson, clearly, I quote him at the end, right? He was certainly a major influence on me coming to America and discovering him.
Proprioception was important. for me, too.
Proprioception, the book of Nicole. I never got to meet him. Robert Kelly told me to drive up to Gloucester. He would love to meet a young European poet who was translating Paul Celan, whom he knew about. And I didn't have a driving license, and I figured the bus to Gloucester on the off chance of seeing someone was a bit much at that time. So I missed him.
Well, the work didn't miss him.
But I've read him ever since in great detail, and I'm rereading right now a wonderful book that talks about him, is Amiel Alcali's history. History, what is it called, or something like that. And wonderful essays, wonderful writing on Olson. He's still, to me, Olson is still very much a central figure.
We often go to Gloucester because actually we made a film on Garrett Lansing. That's you can see it on our Vimeo channel, and I think also they have it now at Penn Sound. But we made a film with Garrett Lansing when he was still with a lot of his readings. So we still go there.
Garrett showing us Olsonian places, behind Gloucester and so on. So
That doesn't come in the
no, that is not in
particular
the
movie. But
There's someone, it may have been George Butter who wrote on Olson, I'm not sure, but who argued that Olson's kingfisher, kind of Olson got the wrong bird. It should have been the cormorant.
yeah, there is an issue with the.
Mrs. Kingfisher, that's true, that's true. There's some poems that talk about that, actually. Yeah.
I just want to say, because it seemed to fit with what Tammy said, in painting, small paintings need to feel powerful. Like birds, they're powerful. And large paintings need to feel intimate. And somehow you covered all that in your works together.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Stephen, you should go up there.
Yeah, it was really lovely when you opened up with a wave poem. I was hearing the ocean. I thought it was really kind of a very.
Thank you.
How can you write wave poems in Tucson?
I I've lived here longer than anywhere in my life, but I was born and raised in New York, and I lived in California. So
Right, okay,
my
so
formative years and my
Yeah, Tucson is the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, it is. I was going to say. And actually, I thought of it this morning while I was looking at the sombrero and I was chasing a cactus wren and experiencing the cholas in my legs. But no, you can't go off the trail. I learned that. But I was really thinking we're at the bottom of the sea, and your poems really brought it. But this morning I was kind of feeling the sea for some reason.
I was told this was a beach, just no ocean anymore. This is my home now, and I love it, but I am nostalgic always for one coast or the other. So it's always living in my.
Steven, your poems are beautiful. I
Thank
love
you.
that whole
Thank
first
you.
series. It was quite wonderful.
Thank you. And this is the first time I've read, a big reading since before COVID. So, it is amazing to come back and be here with all of you. What a way to do it with my favorite.
I love the P's and Q's and the geometry. They refer to like two different kinds of infinity, and it feels like another affinity between your two works is this, the shapes, the lines, and the circles. The horseshoe crab piece is just amazing.
Derrida has this phrase called the sans of the pure cut, the without of the pure cut, and that always, and I think maybe thinking about you as a printer and letters and how the letter imposes itself and pushes through and cuts the world. And so the line of a pure line in any letter or in any line of poetry makes that incision, but then it circles it, heals it, closes it back up again. So.
Well, and with letters, and particularly P's and Q's, also B's and D's, you have the X height, which is the round part of that, and then you have descenders and ascenders, and you can just think about that in any number of ways, what that means for the letter's connection to the body, many things.
Absolutely. That's why this book is not finishable, I think. There's always more to discover, always more to...
No pressure when it's not finishable.
So I have a question about that, maybe for you all in different ways. Like, it just seems like there's a lot of ongoing work and different iterations. I know you a couple of times, or Pierre, you've said that's another book in the work. So I'm just curious how you come to that. Like, where does one work end and another begin?
Well, there are some books that are sequences, like the one that Charles published is those 40 specific terms, the Arabic words, you had 4 or 5 of them. And so that was a coherency. Other books had their own ending somehow because I ran out of anything to say on that subject, and then sometimes Hazard, that Charles has in his hand, is also one of those books that has basically a subject thing. Hazard means it's the Arabic word that gives hijra, going away, i.e. exile, and so on. And so that book, semantically has poems that deal with the notion of exile and some other ones. And I also figured that if I could think of a way of writing a very long poem, I would, so I started a poem called The Commons, which uses 6 different strains of already other little sequences plus new work, and that will take me 20 more years.
Yes.
Or two.
Nicole, you.
I don't think in terms of books. That's the last thing I think about.
it's so painful for me to put a book together. I am, I do it once in a while. When I did Bival, it kind of happened. I did Landscape, it happened, but it's not my thing. I'd love to have more books. I have material to do books, but I have to have somebody who helps me put a book together. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. I'm not interested. It's just I have no time.
But another project I have is to put the book of Demo Poetics, the text of a lot of things you've seen and heard together. If you find a publisher, you can also use pictures and so on, because it needs to be that complex.
But I do the leporellos, and I do the drawings and the paintings, and when I need to write pieces for some performances, I do it without problem. And I love reading books, but I can't make books. I'm sorry.
She's from
I'm
the south of
disabled.
France.
I'm from
The oral culture, not
Oral
from
culture.
Paris and
I'm
the
a-
Mallarmé and
No. I'm a Trobaritz.
Yeah.
It really is a kind of, random decision almost. Here's a book, you put 2 covers, but
Could be.
they all do continue and they all do dissolve and yield other books. And I think maybe you just write one book in your life and you decide to have
that's
I love the term domo poetics. I feel like we need new language to talk about the world, and that's such a beautiful way.
Thank you.
What's domo mean in Japanese? I know domo arigato is a
Good
particular
question.
thing.
Any
It's
Japanese
like,
scholar?
thank you, but it can be used in so many different ways.
Well, that's a...
Sure,
Look
a new
into
poem
that.
coming next. We're going to investigate the etymology there and the
You do the
translationary
Japanese.
matter of domo into.
I was thinking, what was the poem that you said, end is and? Just to go back to that for other question. End is and.
Oh, the desert.
Oh, that was
Desert.
from this
Yeah.
and the part that I read from
Hashem.
this.
Yeah.
Azure, what it means?
End is and. I just
No,
like
no.
that, but I wanted to ask not about end is and, which Charles read for us, but about migration versus exile. And I wonder, thinking about birds you're talking about birds moving, a bird that you didn't expect to be in a place, and about exile, being sort of shut off from a place or moving away from a place. What's your relationship to sort of moving back and forth in that in-betweenness versus leaving it behind, leaving something behind?
Well, you can't leave between us behind, by kind of the definition of the term, right? You're always in between. So, that is where you are. And in there you can move nomadically and should move nomadically, I think, as you need to, as you wish, as you want. To me it was always, there's a very local decision. I come from Luxembourg, the teeniest country. You had to have good brakes on your bicycle as a kid, or you'd hit the border and you need a passport. So as soon as I was out, I never wanted to go back and live there. And so I was, in that sense, always in exile, just as I was in exile from all the languages. Because my Luxembourgish we speak at home, but in school you learn to write in German and then to sing in French. And then English and Spanish came in high school. And then you go to university, there were none in Luxembourg, to another country. So then I decided to write my fourth language, American English, and so those are all exiles, if you want. But they're also, in that sense, also great adventures. In the sense that the nomadic, is the discovery of something you have, someplace you haven't been. And to me, the poem has to be that, as I said, I think yesterday, if I know the last line of a poem I'm writing, I'm not going to write it, I'm not interested. The poem is there to find out what it is. I want to learn from the poem, where the poem takes me. So, that also that the poem itself is that process of discovery that is really an hazard, an exotic writing. It's, by the way, on my arm too, the cover that Nicole designed, of course. Tattooed here.
This book, Hesher, I know was also published in French by Canadian Press.
Oh, Castor Astral.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Well, it's,
no, not the Castor Astral, it was
Le Cris des Forges.
Yeah, I can remember. It's a combine. It's the French with the Canadian. Yeah.
But I noticed also on the screen you had a lot of language in English and French, and it seems to me maybe you think the poem doesn't only exist in one language.
No, of course not. Of course not. You know, it's very useful. You know, I love to have many languages in any given poem. Languages, you know, it's the poet's job to make up the languages, to create them. You know, that's the poet's job. And so I love writing in whatever comes to hand. You know, whatever comes. And I'm writing is a foreign word, or the word that I hear goes somewhere else. Woo, I'm around the corner. Good. You know, wow, something new is happening. Let's go with it. Let's see what it is. And so translation, in a way, you know, functions the same way. I mean, basically, you're translating one word into the next sentence in your writing a poem. And when you translate, you know, somebody's poem, you have a different kind of set of rules and regulations you have to follow. You can't make it up. You know, I'm very furious there are a couple Ceylon translations, not to name the translator, but that are published not in a bilingual edition, but as simply their translations, and they look very much like an all-American poem that starts on the left, you know, and has long lines, and it has nothing to do anymore, you know, with the Ceylon poem that it came from.
It's understandable.
Yeah?
Those translations are understandable.
Yeah, but understandable as what? You know, whatever the translators had in mind, not what Ceylon had in mind. But you know, that's. I mean, I once sat around drinking with Bly, and after he'd done a reading, and I was very young. I was a freshman at Bard College, right? And Kelly didn't want to see him, so it was my job to take him and deal with him. And he arrived, and I took him to his room, and we were going to reading right away, and he took off his jacket, and he had his nylon white shirt left. He opened his suitcase, put a serape over his head, and here he was, the shaman, right? And the nylon shirt and serape over, and then went and did his readings and read poems from a number of people he had translated. And later on, as we were drinking, I said, listen, those French poems, I know the original one.
Well, it was Rimbaud.
Rimbaud, yeah.
I mean, that's what
And I said, you know, I think there's something there that I either misheard or you didn't really do the Rimbaud. And he said, oh yeah, I don't know French really, you know. And I said, well, how about that German poem? Oh, I don't know German either, you know. The only language he knew some was Norwegian because of his origins, right? I just packed up and went home. You know. Not how I see the job of the translator, you know, especially if you're a poet, you know. I mean, if you're a professional translator and you get paid for, you know, and you get away with it, well, good for you, bad for the poet. But you know that a bad translation of a poet into a language can sometimes mess up that poet's acceptance in that language for generations. You know, and that is the terrible stuff, especially in a country like America, where less than 3% of published poetry and literature is in translation. You know, it's not a country that likes translation. I mean, foreign languages. This country supposedly is English. It is, of course, not. As I pointed out yesterday, and I'd like to point it out again if you don't mind, but especially for those ethno-nationalists in the southern part of this country, but 25 names of the United States are of native descent, are not English, right? So, anyway, going on and on with that.
Well, I think that's the epiphany I had when I read your Ceylon, was that there was something very different. And, you completely, I don't want to say authentic, but real or palpable in the language. And that I had seen those other, lesser translations and thought, okay, this is okay, but nothing like that. It was really, I think, everybody who's read that.
It only took me 55 years. But I'm done.
When I was a kid in school in New York, during the budget crisis, foreign language was the one thing that they cut, that and art.
Right, of course.
So,
Yeah.
I grew up aggressively monolingual, and it hampers me. I would have loved to live in Luxembourg and go to school there and learn all that.
Well, that's what I told the years I was teaching supposedly creative writing, I would stop teaching creative writing because I really didn't want to hear what the students had to say about their love life. And, I told them to, find another language. They need to learn another language so that they could understand the limits of their language. That you have that one, and then find a great poet in that other language and translate that poet. That's the way you learn how to write, not by, fantasizing about last night not getting laid.
Unless you sleep with someone who doesn't speak your language.
That's useful.
I'm sorry.
Good point.
Just saying, Pierre.
Well, shall we?
Thank you.
Thank you. so
Thank you
much.
very much, everybody.
I believe there's still wine and
Yeah, there's still wine and
cookies and
cheese.
crackers, please.
Please hang out.
Yeah.
Talk more, hang out.